Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Radicle Thursday. This week, Bella and Kenya are talking to Njeri, the CEO and founder of Health Story. And I was really struck by this conversation while listening to three women of color talk about their very vulnerable experiences navigating the American health system. And all three of them have very unique and yet sadly similar stories. I am inspired and hopeful in listening to Njeri and her upcoming product launch to help, especially women of color, to navigate this. It is a serious problem that we have here in America where women, especially women of color, die unnecessarily every single day and suffer, and their medical experiences are not taken seriously. It is a form of trauma, and we need to start talking about it. We need to address it, and we need people like Njeri to step up and provide these tools to women that will help keep them alive and help them find the answers to their health problems that they are seeking. So I'm excited to bring you this episode. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on it.
So, first of all, welcome again. And we would love to know a little bit about you and who you are.
Sure. My name is Njeri Matthew. I am the founder and CEO of Health Story. About me, I am born and raised in Kenya, educated in England and here in the States, and settled here in New York after coming here for my master's. And since becoming chronically ill and disabled back in 2019, my world turned upside down, and I realized a new purpose in helping myself and millions of others living with chronic illness learn how to advocate for your health and learn how to navigate the healthcare system, because it's a brutal world out there. So I founded Health Story back in 2020, and we're building our product and launching soon. I am a creator, artist first, builder, human being who has always struggled to be heard and struggled to give voice to my mental and physical health. And having found myself navigating an abundance of trauma and in the situation where I didn't have any one fighting for me or any way to fight for myself, and feeling desperate and scared. But then also acknowledging I'm a very privileged human being, and how can I use those privileges and talents to make things better? Is that a decent summary about me?
Fabulous.
Yeah, that's good.
So you mentioned a little bit that you did some schooling in England. Very cool. And now in New York. So what are you getting your master's in, out of curiosity?
So I finished high school in England, did my undergrad at Duke University in public policy, minored in music, and then went back to Kenya, worked for 2 years in advertising. I came here to New York for my master's in music business, of all things, at NYU a while, like 12 years ago. Like I'm old, much older than I look, thank God. And have been now here in New York for the last 12 years, working predominantly in and with startups, predominantly in the tech world, but then also in ad world a little bit, but predominantly in tech.
Now I'm going to ask a question that, may or may not be the case. But since you said you worked with a lot of tech, see it, this is kind of off topic, I guess, but you're seeing more and more these days people saying that, getting a basic understanding or whether it's informal or formal education and coding is helpful for working in the tech field. So have you found yourself doing any of that out of curiosity?
I refuse to learn how to code. Not doing it. I refused that a while ago, and I am adamant. And I mean, the most I will do is like some CSS tweaks, but that is something very, very early on. And I tried, right? I'm like, I'm gonna make a good faith effort in this, and I'm like, no, code is not me. That is like, but that is also, here's the secret of tech, not the secret, but my approach and my thinking and my way of being able to assert myself in this world that, yes, has been built around the ability to create the technology, to code, to engineer, right? But I'm coming into it as I'm here to build a business that leverages technology. I'm coming at it as I'm trying to paint a picture, create a product. The tools I'm using are technology. And now, I mean, there was a point where, yes, not knowing coding or not having a technical language was a big disadvantage, but we're coming into the no code world. At this point, it's like, whatever skills you have, let's make it efficient. They are making big leaps or innovative leaps on the engineering end. There are a few that are going to do that, but if the goal is to create products that people like engage with and add value, don't matter if you code. And you will never, I will die not knowing any code. I'll be happy. That'll be on my gravestone, actually. I refuse to learn how to code.
Yeah,
Bella and I really tried to code back in like 5th grade. We were like,
give me some credit.
Yeah,
I coded there for a couple of years.
Okay, I did maybe like 2 years, and I was really into it. But then it just kind of died off, honestly.
Yeah, that was one of my hyperfixations. I got really hyperfixated on coding for a couple years there, and then I kind of just one day just gone.
It like baffles me that I was so into it. Like, it is just not my personality at all. I was so into it.
Yeah, it's not drastically different from what I do now, but it's different, much different than what I do now. So that's interesting.
But did you enjoy it? Do you enjoy the?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think the part that I liked was just like solving puzzles, like being able to like put it together and then the result. But
yeah, I didn't do it. I would say the same thing. I loved solving things and the satisfaction of getting it right. Kind of like when this may not apply to everyone, and not everyone may talk about or know about this, but so in high school for physics, we had this thing called UTEX, which is the University of Texas has this like physics online homework program. The satisfaction of getting the answers right because they're so difficult gave me life. It's kind of like a similar thing to coding. It's an interesting thing that you said that, the whole thing about efficiency, because you've seen, I guess, if you're saying that's kind of moving away from that direction, but you saw a big push for like the need, no matter what field you're like in, when you're in tech, to need to code. And people are like, it's so important, like you need to be able to do this. So you heard this big push, no matter what you were going to do, if you're going to be in the tech field, about like not being able to strive within it if you didn't know how to do it. So I think it's interesting that you point out, you're there to do a specific job. You shouldn't be having to, in a sense, be knowing how to do someone else's job to the extent that they do. Like, you are coming in for a specific reason, and that helps with efficiency and stuff like that. So that's interesting that you pointed, kind of that whole efficiency issue out, because I don't think I've really thought about that, just probably because of what's been pushed. In that field.
And there is a what year are, just so I have a context of what year are you guys in, or where you, I mean, in terms of,
we're freshmen in college.
okay. I don't know how to ask, like, because I'm like, usually I'd be like, how old are you, and just make it clear, and I'm like, I'm 35. But no, that's a lie, I'm 36. Anyway, point being, there's a whole lot to the real world and how this works that is out of your view and perspective right now, right? I don't want to give you spoilers. You still got like time. And I don't mean that in like a condescending or anything way, but what you learn is, and especially when you are seeing things pushed out, and not just tech, but other industries of, oh, you can't work within or work with us until you have achieved this, right? Like, okay, that is a false narrative or a lie, shall we say? Because if you look at the end of it and you look at, okay, these successful tech companies, who are the founders? A lot of them are non-tech people. If you look at how engineering teams and how these businesses are built, I mean, there's a whole lot of sales, marketing, blah, there's a lot. And also, when you come into the industry as a coder, you're a machine, you're part of the plug. There's nothing like, the skills are the skills, they're commoditized. My kind of thought is like, what is being pushed hard, take it, but be open to that might not be true and probably isn't.
Yeah, have a malleable mindset.
Yeah.
That's an important lesson in general. We talk about it often to have, no matter what you're talking about, because if you get too set, you forget to listen to other perspectives and other views, which could, if you listen to them, could change your mind completely.
Absolutely. And be adaptable. And you live and learn every single day for sure.
For sure. Okay, let's get back on track, because we got a little sidetracked there with my question.
So you mentioned so you got diagnosed with a chronic illness back in 2019 May. Can I ask what it was?
Yes, you can ask. However, what I went through in 2019 was not like, I'm not formally diagnosed. What happened, I got sick and I became debilitatingly ill over the course of a couple of months. And the hardest thing beyond my body breaking down was shortness of breath, fatigue, and the fatigue was the most debilitating thing. Joint pain, spasms. It was just like, there was like days where I couldn't walk. But beyond all right, my body's not working, navigating the healthcare system, nothing could have prepared me, even though that I've been in the healthcare system with my mental health, but trying to find a doctor to listen to me, to take me seriously, to actually do a damn test. There was a point where I had collapsed because this old primary care wasn't listening to me. I went to another one, and I collapsed in the office, went to the ER, tried to get back to her office, couldn't see her, tried to find another primary care, and I was trying to get an MRI at this point because it's done all like the main blood work. And I was refused. And like it was, and I remember talking to my mom who's back in Kenya, and she's like, an MRI, what is an MRI? And it also opened me up to not just the difficulties of being ill, but the realities of what it means to exist in the Black body in this country, and how deep the inequities and the cruelty of racism, how deep it's embedded in every system. And looking at it in the healthcare system is, it's like salt on top of wounds, right? Because your assumption or what you're taught is you're sick, you go to the doctor's like, what is wrong with you? And also I came in with, I come from privilege in Kenya. So I had very great healthcare. And I have experienced a doctor who will listen to you and take your notes and blah, blah, blah. But to come here and, like doctors are just looking at you glazed, it's like you don't even exist. And you feel that I can I can sense how you sense the racism, you sense the disregard, you sense the I am 3/5. You're viewing me as 3/5. And the desperation and the terror. And that what I always remind myself, and what is a good reality, what am I going to do in this situation, is remembering that I have an escape latch. I can always just be like, Mom, Dad, get me out of here, go back home to Kenya, right? I will never, every morning, I am grateful for my privileges, but I'm asking myself, if this is me and I'm reasonably articulate, educated, blah, 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 how on earth are other people surviving? How? I don't understand. This is back in 2019, and I just started to, while I was sick and I wasn't working, I would spending all my time on the couch. I was just understanding and researching the healthcare system, understanding the history of how medicine has been practiced in this country and around the world, understanding why the system works the way it does and the incentives, and seeing that there's an opportunity here. Yes, I'm going through something millions have gone through. The experience of going to a doctor and being gaslighted and being, no, it's just stress or blah, is, I think, almost every woman actually I've talked to has had some kind of negative healthcare experience. And we're talking about chronic illness. We're talking about like the thing that is most expensive and wasteful. I think are we on like $1 trillion and something of our, like 1/3 of our healthcare dollars are spent on chronic illness. I mean, are wasted. I'm wasted on administrative care for chronic illness, which is exactly this, we're not being heard, so it will take me years to be diagnosed. To go back to your question of what it is that ails me. So like so many in our community, well, not so many, those of us who are educated, have access, we become our own doctors, so to speak. And you form these communities of like people testing, sharing information, and their different chronic illness communities. So that's why I've learned to decipher and figure out and make my best guesstimate, which is firstly, on top of an underlying, potentially underlying genetic condition, which I am almost sure that hypermobility syndrome, Ehlers-Danlos, in 2019, likely experienced postviral syndrome, which is basically the equivalent of long COVID, but with a different virus. So a way of framing it is I went through what folks with long COVID went through in 2020 and like, oh my gosh, this is the healthcare system. I went through that in 2019. So when COVID came and I got sick, I was prepared. But even now, as a year of, I don't know, unspeakable, like, let me put it this way. I am, now that we're all reopening up and I'm half vaccinated and I don't really want to go back into the outside world. I am realizing how much my body has been through, because I basically lived in isolation for the past year, right? And human bodies are not meant to exist in this way. So, which is to say that I have evolved to think of my conditions or my illness as like diagnosis. I think diagnosis is a label. When I finally get a label, whether it's chronic fatigue syndrome, Ehlers-Danlos, whatever it is, those are like good to have. At the end of the day, for most of us who, no, maybe not true, but for a lot of us with autoimmune conditions, with kind of these underexplored, why is the female body reacting this way? But a lot of it where the immune system comes into play, which is really under-researched and underfunded. Hence, everyone freaking out about, or perplexed about long COVID. It's about, I view my body holistically. So, for example, I am now gluten intolerant. So, all right, we're getting through some IBS stuff, and I see it as this systems that I need to work with and manage as best as I can. For a lot of us, the medical system is not going to give us treatments. It's just going to be, well, you got to manage your system. Like, sorry, you're tired, but we can't help you. And you realize how it's disappointing knowing or hearing how far medicine has not come. And there's an opportunity to go further simply because we are not taking the time to understand. We are not, medicine has not researched women.
Yeah.
Like not in all these, like, women die in car crashes or I know of incidents because they've taken the dose of a sleeping pill. That dose is meant for man. And that's not even getting into how we've treated the Black body, or like 50% of medical trainees still believe or have one or more beliefs about Black people, that our skin is thicker, our nerve endings are less sensitive, nonsensical things that are still filtered through.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
Now I was going to say, you mentioned a lot of stuff that I definitely relate with. So I have chronic migraines, and it has been, I mean, you could just ask, like, it has been the longest year, like past 3, I don't even know, the years just blend together.
Several
like 2
years, yeah.
Like, of my life, because so I got a couple concussions, and I'm like, so you're talking about like trying to figure it out for ourselves because doctors aren't going to do it. And I definitely text Bella because Bella's like the health one. I'm like, yeah,
I have
can you research this for me?
I have a lot of health complications and issues. And so
I hear you from, I hear from the way you described ADHD. I'm like, this girl, she knows her body.
Listen, she has so many books on just encyclopedias.
I have so many
I need you to come on, like, lead our advocacy because very impressive, but continue.
Yeah, I have like 6 doctors, so I'm like, what are you experiencing? Ask them about this, ask them about that. You should look into that.
Yeah, so, but it's just, I mean, I know that, like, when I started, I think it all started with a concussion. So I had 2 concussions, and the second concussion, like, from then, it just my headaches would not go away. And I was like dizzy, like I was just miserable for this year and a half straight. Like, I was so miserable because I was in so much pain, and no one, like, you can't physically see it. And so then I would go to doctors. What'd you say?
You could see it.
Okay. Well,
at least I could, because you were more like,
It was definitely, I was like, I was very miserable.
Personality-wise,
so interesting how, like, the doctors were like, oh, it's still just post-concussion. And then we would reach like 5 months out, and I was like, this is not post-concussion. And I would have another doctor's appointment. We like tracked we went through my records, my dad and I have like 30 something doctor's appointments. And it's insane how much money is wasted. Thank God we have health insurance, because if we didn't, we would.
Yeah, but even with health insurance,
exactly. Even with health insurance, it's still so expensive.
Going back to chronic diseases, a lot of times they won't even cover half the expenses that deal with chronic, which is a whole nother issue, and that impacts doctors' abilities to, give diagnoses and treatment. But you can continue. That's a little tidbit on there.
But yes, and so I just stopped going to doctors. I still, something in me still wants to go to doctors to find how I can fix it, because it's so frustrating. But I am so just ticked off and just done with spending money for nothing that I'm just it is what it is. But I tried every doctor. We did ENT, we did cardiologist because I had a heart pain for a while. We did neurosurgeon. We did a naturopathy. We tried all of it. And then they're like, you're just stressed. And mind you, I am a very stressed out person. I put myself into the situations, But even when I'm not doing anything, like even in the summer, even when I'm sleeping, like I go to sleep with a migraine and I wake up and I just have a migraine. Like it's just constant and it's so frustrating, like trying to explain to people. And I had one doctor, oh my goodness, I had one doctor at like the local hospital. It was CCNC, and we went, and she was like, she said to my dad, what, with me in the room, she was like, there are,
I
because
remember this.
what do we do? Because he was like, she's miserable, like we need something. And the doctor said, like, there are clinics where people can go for like basically
Imagining things,
like
right?
imagining, like their pain is imaginary. And I, like, my eyes were, and my dad was like, we're done. And I was just like, remember, I still, even to this day, it still pisses me off. And I just like get emotional about it. Like, I just don't understand why you would ever say that to a person, like that their pain is imaginary and that they're making it up. But she like was convinced that I was lying. I was like, no, I promise you I'm not. But I definitely in the healthcare system, the one that I experienced, maybe just because I grew up in such a white town, but I really don't like race is not the first thing that comes to my mind. For me, it's either me being a female or just me being young, I think for sure. Cause I have a lot of conversations, like a lot of my interactions are with older people.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times they were like, oh, she's just a
Just
teenage
young.
girl.
Yeah.
She's just
Yeah.
young. So
Doesn't know.
that's how and I was like, I know what I'm talking about. And so that definitely was like what I've experienced in the healthcare system. It's a hot mess.
Important to know, because we talked about this on the previous podcast. We touched on POC experience with this issue. We primarily talked about women, but it's more of an implicit bias that doctors have because of the years of like that one study that happened in the 60s that told doctors, POC and broke it down for different kinds of POC experience different level of pain tolerance, and that they have higher levels in liver and stuff like that. So they should adjust in factors. So you don't see it directly all the time. It's important to note, but it is impacting you whether you believe it or not, because that's impacting their ability to treat you, because they're going off of a study that, might I add, is not even peer reviewed from 60 years ago from a racist white man. So you get different biases within that. And then, within the Latinx community, you see a lot of biases when we're expressing our concerns of being overly dramatic in the way we present ourselves. And so, you see it in different ways like that. And so they implicitly have an adjusting factor within their thought process. So it's important to note that real quick before, so you might not see it directly. So for me, I'll touch into my little story here real quick so you guys can get some background. Because I've talked about throughout our podcast, because somehow this always comes up, tidbits about my health issues. I have, and my health file is stacked. I have so many doctors because I have ADHD. It's genetic for us. Everyone but my mom has it. I have, a lot of nutrient deficiency. So I see an integrative medicine doctor. I have ENT problems with my stomach, and then my acid reflux and my throat and my asthma, my vocal cord dysfunction. I have a lot of different issues going around. My mom, I've had pain similar to the symptoms you were talking about earlier. I've actually had all of those for quite a while now. And my mom started getting really bad issues with joints and stuff like that. So she started seeing a rheumatologist recently. And so then I had to start seeing them because we've suspected for a long time that I have an autoimmune disease of sorts. I have also gluten intolerance. So I have a delayed reaction to, or allergic reaction to eating gluten, which you could probably relate to it. It's so painful when that time comes around and I'm in the bathroom, crying. It's so, so painful. I have hives, the whole shebang. I suspect, though, it's gotten much worse recently, and I've gotten much more sensitive to it. But, it's gotten to the point where, so you got the fact that, you know, you're a woman, you're young. And so you have these factors that have already made it difficult for doctors to, you know, put together a story and what's happening and give that formal diagnosis, which I've been searching for and my family has for years now for me, similar to you. And we haven't been able to figure out anything. Thousands of tests run and, you know, thousands of breakdowns because I couldn't figure out what's happening. I've been in pain. You know, I am scared of needles and I've gotten so much blood drawn with nothing consistent showing up, but still these feelings. And it's gotten to the point, and I talk more casual with people regardless of age. And so I don't tend to talk in a formal manner that I guess doctors expect of people to talk to them by, which I understand, but it's something that I've never been able, I have a hard time with adjusting to different people's, you know, emotions and receptive. It's just another thing with, you know, ADHD and ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. They're the same category. They just present slightly different symptoms, but pretty much very similar. So it's gotten to the point where I will often forget symptoms in doctor's appointments, or I'll explain them, but in a way too casual manner, so they don't take me seriously. So I've had to literally, my mom has made me write down every symptom and in detail, and a lot of times I'll forget about specific details. And so I've had to bring in papers to doctor's offices, and I actually have to go back again, but to the rheumatologist, but I haven't been able to go back. But yeah, it's difficult because a lot of times chronic diseases and illnesses, they're resistant to diagnosing people that are younger because they're like, it hasn't presented fully, even though you're getting all the symptoms of the full blow. You know? So, and there's a lack of, in the States especially, you see a lack of a collaborative effort because health here is so privatized that, you know, if you want to have a collaborative effort, it's going to be, you have to share and physically bring your folders from one doctor's to another, and they won't talk within themselves, which is also oftentimes the solution to finding, you know, what is happening, having that collaborative aspect, which is not happening here. So it takes years, like it's an ongoing process.
So sad to hear. Firstly, thank you for sharing, and wow, like this is why I'm building. This is exactly the reason why Health Story. I mean, it breaks my heart that like you're so young and already capturing what is like that. That's heartbreaking, right? That this is how you built the system that is firstly not just a cap privatized, because I'm a capitalist with a heart, but is all the you've created it where you basically said that there is a value to the human body, but how we're going to assign that is going to be so opaque. And there are a bunch of us just going to be making money. I'm going to make this really convoluted insurance system. Health insurance is a scam. It's this
for sure.
It should not exist, right? And we've all bought into it, or America has, or had to. And now we're at the point where like we need to move fast. The next pandemic is around the corner. We can't spend a year about, oh my gosh, a virus infects the brain. Like whatever crap is going on with long COVID. And I say crap and I'm being antagonistic. I apologize. There's also a lot of anger, but we have to move forward, right? You cannot, and the fact that this is a system with the ability to save life, like the skills and what you're able to do and what is done in medicine and what we've been able to do with the vaccine is phenomenal. The tools are there. But I think, as and all of us as humans have to think of, man, we don't have time to waste. And when it comes to how we view health, when it comes to how we treat and care for the human body, I believe it's us, those of us who have who experience the whole crazy journey of the human condition to shove that in people's faces, shoving our humanity in people's faces. I love thinking of how MLK and nonviolent protests were, we're going to show up as humans with all of our chaos, all of our mess. Health Story will make your story easier to absorb, right? So as a company, we're making it easier. We're here to, like, you know, all those folders and files and lists and blah, 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 blah.
Make it more
now
collaborative.
we're here, right?
Location, yeah.
Right, exactly. And empowers you with your data, not only all in one place, but you're able to, you know, I'm looking at, and certainly offline, I'll share where we're at with our product mock-ups. But when we're like using the prototype right now, I remember things from, oh yeah, I remember I had this symptom or this happened with my COVID experience last year, right? That's how memory is. And presenting that information in a way that you, human being who just feels all this stuff and wants to express and capture how you feel, understand it and feel heard and feel seen. And there is that profound effect of just painting a picture and putting things in visual languages or understandable snippets. But then also showing that to people who you need to get care, and Health Story being a way for them to absorb it quicker. Because I reached a point where it's like the stacks are against you, and it's not. The system is designed this way, right? So like, yeah, the healthcare system is not designed for Black women. It's not designed for Black people. As a woman, medicine is not designed for you. It just isn't. So now we have to think of, well, how do we, this is what we have. We can't break it down. When it comes to health, like you need the ER, right? You need the life-saving techniques, and it's our right. But what is it that we can do to show up for ourselves in a system that will continue discluding us, and letting us die? You know,
literally, like not figuratively,
right? Like
literally
letting us. I mean, and that's the just. I don't know, an unspeakable aspect of this last year. And I remember when COVID was coming, when it was coming, but when Italy was bad and I was starting to like imagine and freak out, and realizing, oh, this is basically like, this is the reason health, like this is going to showcase how big this problem is, right? And I remember telling my friends back in Kenya, we know who's going to die. And these cycles will continue because a lot of people are expendable. But it doesn't have to be this way, is my long and short. And finding ways, like my job or my role is to leverage what I have access to, leverage what I know I'm skilled at. And if I leverage what I know is possible with the tools available, to make it easier, right? We don't need more apps for, I don't know, social community, like no more TikTok app. Well, whatever. But technology can be used and businesses can be built that do provide functional value for you. So it is easy for you to use. You enjoy maybe not enjoy, because no one like really, well, I mean, it's intuitive, it's an intimate space, like your journal. And is also valuable to the provider, whoever it is who you want to communicate with. And is also sustainable as a business, right? And creates capital, and that is further invested not only into the business, but into our communities, right? Into creating advocacy services, into building what we have to build for ourselves, because no one else will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned like not only is it valuable for you as the user, but also for the people who you're sharing it with. Because I think a lot of times, I mean, at least for me, when I think about advocacy, I just think about like for yourself, like it's very personal, like just,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I don't really think about kind of the next step or how it's also impacting those who you're like speaking to. And so that aspect I think is very important in creating change, especially I mean in any like system, but especially in the healthcare system because you need the other people to be listening. So
Yeah. And I one of my best friends is a doctor, and she, you know, in being a very supportive lifeline. I mean, there are points last I've given up on the system a lot of times, right? So I'll go through breaks of like I'm done, and then go through a flare up. But she reminded me like you can give up on the system, but then you're on your own, right? And beyond that, like I this is our right. This is your right, right? I have a right to exist as a healthy human being with blah, 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 blah. Like now, I, when it comes to health and healthcare, especially the, uh, here in America, we're individual and we're strong and like health, if you're ill or lack of health, there is that shame just in general, right? If it's an accident, fine. But if you're, there is being unwell or ill there's a moral aspect to it that's ridiculous. And like I found myself asking, and I'd ask myself, okay, how can a Black woman say this to me? How can this happen? What is it that could create this like warped reality? And what are the ways forward for those of us who need care? I broke down what is happening in that doctor's appointment, right? You're coming in, this doctor's already assumed this. They're pattern matching. And part of that is like, that's part of the job. I understand that you have to see this. I understand you probably hate your job. Most of them do. And well, at this stage now are traumatized and burnt out. I understand that you are taught and understanding how medicine is taught to just like recognize you're like, okay, blood work normal, so she's not going to die.
Diagnose the
Da, da, da,
object,
blah,
says
blah, blah.
zebra.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then
They
anything
diagnose
that's
zebras way later.
exactly, anything that's like more complicated or whatnot. A woman comes in with like abdominal pain, whatever, period stuff. And because of the financially, like they have to do volume. Like I don't blame providers so much as I blame the healthcare system and the fact that it's so based on the hospital. Like that's where money is made. So the system, your primary care provider has very little incentive to actually sit down and will likely be punished for sitting down and taking time to listen to you and to think through what could be happening. That's not the job that they are paid to do. Now I can only imagine and understand how frustrating it is just coming in as a younger voice, where it's, even before you emit a word, it's, well, she's just a kid, right? But our approach is, this is health stories like your armor. You come in like, all right, if you're not going to believe my voice, if you're not going to like, if you think I'm there was one incident when I went to the ER and the woman was like, oh, were you here yesterday? I'm like, and she was saying this with a smile, like I'm club hopping in the ER. I'm like, what are you talking? Why would you say that to someone coming into a stretcher? And like having your health story is a form of care and protects you. at least that's what I want to do.
Oh, for sure. So just so everyone knows, so from a medical perspective, as they go through, med school and their training, for efficiency purposes, which, is a double-edged sword. You get the efficiency, but you can oftentimes leave behind people that don't fall within the most direct scenario. So you are trained to look for and with what the symptoms and the signs that you're being presented, to find the patterns that are more common and more likely, and before the zebras is what they refer to them as, the more unlikely, based off of stats and stuff like that and diagnosis, which is fine. You get a lot more people formal diagnoses, you can get treatment better and faster, but you leave behind a good chunk of people with chronic illnesses. So which is why you oftentimes see people who have more chronic illnesses have to go to people like rheumatologists and things like that are more specialized and trained for those more zebras, so to speak, which can cause massive delays in treatment because of that. And then you get the whole privatized and not collaborative effort, and then you get the fact that a lot of chronic illnesses, and this is one of those things that sucks. So I'll give you an example real quick. I'll use celiac as an example, has over 200 symptoms. Now you could only be presenting 5 of those 200. And those 5 could be something more similar like IBS. And so you could get diagnosed with IBS way before celiac. And then there's a whole, with more food specific things. A lot of those tests aren't, provided by insurance. So you could not get that formal diagnosis even more. So there's lots of layers behind not being able to get that direct diagnosis. So for me, I'm 19. I've been dealing with this, since probably I was 13, 14, consistently. I easily get frustrated with these times, especially when I have more massive flare-ups, especially in joint pains and stuff like that. But I have to take a step back and recognize what's going on and the different implications in why I am not able to get something, as direct, and understand that, yes, there are big flaws within the system that, if I was in a different country, may not have existed to the extent that it does in the States. But I have to have faith that we'll eventually get there. And, you want to strive to have a better system. And I have to just remind myself, can't give up, because if I give up, then that's allowing my body to, and my, what's happening, to take over and not, and win over. So with, sharing your stories, especially in the chronic illness and chronic conditions community, it's incredibly helpful because, the doctors are doing what they are trained to do, which is finding these patterns within your situation. But on your side, as the patient side, a great way to help that search go quicker is by looking at these communities and these stories that people are expressing, because they've already gone through that process, or they're going through it and they're further along. So what they are experiencing, and you may find you're experiencing similar things, they might already have a good understanding of what it could be. And so that can help you narrow down and go to these doctors and say, you know what, I've seen similar people have the same symptoms as me, described everything like that. Please look for this. And that could speed up. So this is talking about importance from a patient's perspective of sharing your stories. And, it's something kind of really personal to you and what you're going through with the frustrations and, everything that goes wrong with it emotion wise. But it's important, if you're comfortable, of course, to share your story so that you're able to help provide maybe some answers to other people so that they can, their story can be shortened. They don't have to go through struggle as long as you did.
Yeah, that's so well said. I learned about Ehlers-Danlos, I'm pronouncing it wrong, but from an article from someone describing her fatigue and specific issues with her skin. And what has amazed me is how open, it's not even being, well, it is open, but it's more of like, we are sharing is there music? Can you guys hear music in the background? Okay. The most important thing for all of us is we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be validated, right? And in the case of those of us who are ill, we want to feel better, right? We don't want to be here tracking symptoms and like going through our meds and
Takes a
whatnot.
lot of
You do it,
energy.
exactly, that's a whole other job. Like, you want to live your life, right? And to have in good health, and to have the support and the care that facilitates that, that enables that, regardless of how ill health or whatever you are. When we gather and we hear people's stories, you hear the frustration. There's so much pain, so much medical trauma,
Absolutely.
like unbelievable. And when now, which makes you think, let's go back to these statistics about rare diseases. Are we really rare? Or are we just talking about, we haven't been listening to women? Right? Like, women are not rare, actually. We're not a minority, in case you haven't noticed. But that's the answer, right? That this is, and it's, and if you think of beyond how medicine is practiced, think of science, right? How we understand the
very
human
male.
body. Exactly, right? And so there's an opportunity here to say, well, if we if we can provide those of us who are struggling to be heard, who have these symptoms, if Health Story can enable you to share that, to communicate that, then we begin to think, okay, let's reapproach how we're doing this, and let's, be more expansive and creative in how we view and understand these symptoms and diagnoses. Because our current way is failing all of us. It's certainly failing half of us. And the question is, well, how does that happen within this like privatized system? How does that coexist? I don't have those answers, but we'll figure it out. We'll build it ourselves.
Yeah, a lot of times
we'll rebuild it ourselves.
Stories of frustration, because I've seen my fair share of stories being told on social media and different platforms and whatnot. We'll see the frustration mainly within, and this goes back to the fact that our healthcare and the way we run things is very individual and privatized. That the frustration lies in people having kind of being passed around, which can create a sense of like, oh, like, sorry, my dog. Can kind of create a sense of like, am I not good enough? And obviously frustration and negative emotion can go along in trauma, medical trauma and stuff like that, because they're passing you along as if, and self-worth goes along with that, and not feeling, oh, maybe I'm not worth it for this doctor. And
maybe I am. Maybe it is in my head, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and they're passing you around primarily because they may not specialize in that field, so they're like, oh, maybe this person is specialized, maybe that they'll know something about it, and then that person's like, oh, well, no, that doesn't fall from what I've been aware of, so I'll pass you along to this person, I'll pass you along to that person. And that's kind of where I see the main frustration coming from a lot of people, is being passed around, kind of like, you're not good enough to look into further because you don't immediately
no one cares. No one is sitting down to
medicine.
care.
The category of medicine that they practice. And that goes back to not having a collaborative method of medicine. It's, again, very individualized in department, and you don't really see, as well as it should be, collaborative, a team coming together and physically within the room or virtually to discuss.
But that's also because of how medicine is run financially, like how that they don't want to share information, right? And there is no reason why we should, well, maybe some reasons, but the lack of, and laws are coming into play about patient access to data, but we're so behind and lagging there because it's about who who's gonna be paid for what, right? And when
Right.
you're being paid fee for a service, when you go to and your rheumatoid guy is like, okay, well, I can't put her in this category of this that I'm going to be billed for. What can I build? No, sorry, bye. Right. And it's not about they have no reason to look at you holistically. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's what your primary care provider is going to do, but your primary care provider is more than likely miserable and just there to like refer uh
Or doesn't
and
have
primary care
access to all the other
right,
information
right,
because
right,
the hospital that runs your doctor's office and primary care may not be associated with the other
exactly,
hospitals.
right, right.
It's just, yeah.
And then how, like, but we can't have 19-year-olds like already like entering like their life in adulthood with all this trauma. This is ridiculous. And however, that said, the strength that you gain, both of you, and you can hear it in like these unfortunate but growth experiences, that's what's going to help change it, right? That's going to help like say, no, this is not okay. Like this, here in America, you should not be uh, 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 given what we have and where we are. It is not okay for you, Mrs. Provider, to ignore me or to not take this time to listen to me. And we want to be able to provide ways to empower people, ways that are as effective, as accessible, as doable, which is hard for digital health, but this it's not working, and it's very. I think I made my life easier in trying to understand like I can't understand the moral aspects, but in just following the dollars is the main thing, is follow the dollars. America, follow the dollars, and racism. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
You think that like what is the answer
Yeah.
to America? Who's making money? And make sure it's a racist system. Like those are two things, right?
Yep.
That's it. That's it. And what are the problems? Racism. Why is this racism? Why is that? That and once you know
Yeah.
that, it's like, all right, this is the battle act. But here's what I say at that point. We are, I think, projected to be a minority majority country in like 2040, 2043. So we're getting brown, we're getting there. Like white supremacy will naturally decimate, right? But that said, we have to rebuild these systems because our brown like kids and whatever in 20 years can't function with this health system. But yeah.
Yeah, you touched on mindset earlier a little bit, like kind of like not settling. And that was definitely one thing that I had to learn for sure, that my mindset, like I had to change because um it's so like your physical health controls everything. Like you can't like you have to have good physical health in order to do anything else in your life. Like that's kind of the first thing. And especially right now, how I'm like not feeling the best, it's definitely for sure like impacting the rest of my life. Um, in a minor way. I'm not sounding dramatic. But for sure I realized like even though like I'm not getting the like treatment that I would like, I still need to like work hard to change my mindset so I can still continue my life, because this doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon. And so once I was able to kind of realize that and realize like, okay, it's here for a reason, like it's teaching me something in some way that I don't understand right now at all, definitely changed everything. And I know my parents one day, they were like, oh, we thought your migraines went away. I was like, they've
No.
gotten worse actually.
Yeah.
Like,
that is, yeah.
no, because it's just my mindset, and like I have to continue going on with my life. And once I was able to realize that while still fighting, and I mean, I'm still currently at the point where I'm just not interested in going to doctors like for my migraine. So like I've taken like a short like year hiatus right now. I'm still in that. But hopefully I'll get out of that and I'll like still seek more treatment or something, information.
Yeah.
But definitely like if and it's so challenging, but if I didn't change my mindset, like
You can't. You have to. Yeah.
you can't live.
That.
Like it's
Yeah.
just, it's impossible.
I remember it's so important what you just said. I think I would say there, rather than mindset, it's more of an adaptation, because there is a grieving process, right?
Mm.
Like I there's an old Njeri who like practiced martial arts, can spar with guys, and like, you know, I grieve her. I remember that feeling of being strong and, you know, what I was capable of doing and not. Um, but you know, that said, it is one of the, if you're living with a chronic illness, you have gone through that, like, oh, this is gonna be here. I remember not last year, when I was trying to go through the diagnostic journey, got an MRI finally, because my thought was this could be MS. And my best friend was like, yeah, the fatigue, especially if it's that heavy, and you know, get that. And it was it was very funny, because there is a reason why you need doctors. So I read the report and I saw lesion, which, you know, and in multiple sclerosis, you have lesions in your brain. And however, this lesion was a cyst behind my ear, and it was like just nothing. But I saw that,
This
and
too.
immediately you, I saw that, and I immediately thought, well, I have MS, I've got a diagnosis. And I was like, yes, treatment, yes, okay, I'm diagnosed. And then I showed it to my best friend, and she's like, oh no, you're fine. And it was so weird how she said it in a, you don't have to worry, you don't have MS. And I burst out in tears. I was like, no, you took my diagnosis. And I was so like so scared, and I was asking myself, how, I don't think I can survive living with these symptoms and living in this unknown world, uncertainty. Like, you mean this is my daily life now? How? What am I going to do? You adapt. You know, as human beings, we are so resilient, and certainly as women, our bodies are built to adapt, because we have to adapt to a lot. But it does not and should not be this hard. It should not be this painful. There is so much unnecessary suffering that we all experience by nature, and because of what we're going through is invisible, right? And if we can make that invisibility visible, it can show you in ways that like, you know, give validity, not that you're asking, give validity, and give voice, rather, to what you're experiencing. But yeah, it's, you can think of it as a superpower, because the strength, and especially this stage of your life, to have that, and to know that you have the capabilities of adjusting, and that's phenomenal. That's amazing. That is a huge superpower, because you're entering a world that is like 2 decades behind you, so you're good. um, and um, and that presence of mind to you know, adapt. But it shouldn't be this hard, though. I do applaud both of you.
You did touch on something real quick about, I mean, you get your test results back. Depending on who your doctor is, you might get your test results like in an email, or you might have to wait till you get to the doctor's office to get them. It just depends on who your doctor is. But if you're, you know, the first of, you know, having immediate access to your test results, a lack of patient education and, you know, quick Google searches can quickly make you jump to, yes, relief, I finally found something.
Yeah, there's definitely that.
And then the frustration later when you go to the doctor's office and they're like, well, actually, that doesn't, that level or that particular thing is not, it may be benign, or it's not, the levels aren't intact with or high enough or what have you.
Yeah.
And a lot of patient, and you'll find as you know go through your healthcare journey rather, that especially I was fortunate enough to my integrative medicine doctor is a gem. He taught me how to read the tests that I was getting, all these blood tests, so that I was able to kind of quickly see, what, that's not, and how to read it, because you look at those tests, they look so confusing. Yeah, but if you take the time and you have a doctor and you ask how to explain how to read it, it helps a lot with the ability to kind of move on quickly and go to the next solution while you're it causes less waste of energy, I guess.
Yeah, and being able to, I mean, there is that education level, right? And we want to help you understand and meet through those
hospital way,
right? Yeah, and when it's like, okay, so your levels, right? And understand it in a like explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old is what I say to people. At the same time, expertise is valued. Like the reason you paid all that money and spent all that time with this training, like that expertise is needed. But there is a whole level, not a whole level, but there's this layer of like basic understanding test results, care navigation, that we want to build both into the product and also be part of the services, the care advocacy that we provide. And it's a lesson for all of us, right? You don't learn it until you have to, right? You don't care about your blood work. It's like, okay, everything's normal, fine, until you're, at least that's for most of us in health, until it happens. And it's not that it's like impossible or difficult. It just needs to be explained in a human way, in human language, without medical jargon, without just make it simple and digestible.
Yeah,
I think, we can do a lot, and a lot of people can gain in that way.
I think it's most helpful, as we're talking, especially the kind of product you're talking about and discussing, is probably gonna, well, at least from my perspective, it seems like it'll probably help the most with young adults transitioning to being fully on your own. You had your parents deal with all medical situations before, so jumping right into having to do that all by yourself, and where all my information is, having to organize it and understand it is, I find it, at least at first I found it really hard, and sometimes I still find it hard when trying to find everything. And so at least from my perspective, I see it it's helpful for those young adults transitioning into full adulthood and having to understand medical situations without their mom being in the doctor's room saying, looking over, and you'd be like, can you tell her what I was talking about? Because they have kind of breaking that down for you and being able to take control.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
So I'm excited to see when you guys come out how.
Yeah, and I'll be leaning on both of you. I'll be like, all right, and hearing your perspective. I mean, it's on one hand, I go through life, and I think most people assume that I'm far younger than I am. But I do, I've lived with depression, anxiety, among other mental health conditions since I was a teenager, right? And when I became anorexic in Nairobi, it was this foreign thing of, this is 90s in Kenya, and where even there's a crazy asylum. That's the only thing that is known about mental health, is there's what's it called? I forget what it's called, but there's a crazy asylum. Anyway, so to be a teenager who is suddenly not eating was very confusing to a lot of people. But my point being is that there is the assumption that you're too young to know or to understand or to feel or blah, blah, blah about yourself. You don't know who you are. And the world will keep telling you that. It doesn't stop when you get 20 or 30. The world will keep telling you, no, you're not really in pain, right? And that learning how to assert yourself, learning what you need to know at that early age. And at the same approach, I'm also starting to talk to medical students, right? Trying to share, this is what people be going through during their education, because that education is not including the reality, of communicating, of understanding, of the patient experience. That's a great idea. I'm gonna be leaning on both of you guys for sure. As soon as we have something, we'll be like, hey, can you test this out? And let me know your thoughts and feedback and input.
Well, I'll just tell you right now, I can see myself for sure using your product.
100%.
All the medical stuff that I have to do, it's nice to have an allocation. And to touch on the medical students, there's definitely, real quick before I get into my little food bit, there's definitely a new wave that we're seeing of medical students coming up in terms of recognizing those implicit biases in patient care. You're seeing it in their pledges more now, and including that tidbit about treating everyone equally and not adhering to those, studies that don't even make, sense. But it's also on double-ended sword. It's important to note that most doctors, and this will continue on, come from families that are doctors. So it's more of a general thing. Quickly to touch on that, but so gonna switch gears to our food incorporation. So the most obvious, I guess, and direct food incorporation rather would be a lot of food illnesses or food related illnesses are oftentimes chronic. So I talked about celiac, that's a chronic illness. Hard to get diagnosed with that oftentimes. And so that's just on a more basic level. And now the second level, and this is going to bring back into my journey, I guess, with healthcare, is how your diet can impact your quality of life. And this is something that, especially now isn't, it's something that is thought of more of a, from POC communities as ancient tales or whatever about holistic, more diet-based medicine. And it's not taken as seriously, or hasn't been in the States and, and history, as a serious way to treat and mitigate some of your issues. Maybe not cure you, because a lot of times you can't really be cured, but really help with your quality of life. So they'll usually just slap on some medication and call it a day, But for example, for me and my mother, we have been taking turmeric. Turmeric?
Turmeric.
Weird. Close enough.
Every day, night, day. And that for me, if you have joint problems or anything of that sort, or pain and dull, constant aching pain, which is just, one of the worst things you can tell. And then I will wake up some days and I'm already in pain. I'm like, oh, it's going to be such a long day.
One of those days. Yeah. I hate that feeling.
But for me, taking them consistently, and I say that loosely because I struggle with taking medicine consistently, which is why I'll plug real quick. If you guys have a lot of medication, look up a pill organizer with an alarm system. That's what I use.
Ooh, interesting.
I 4 times a day with my, it comes with a little alarm that I set the time.
Oh dang, you got it all hourly. Wow, that's very impressive.
But that's, I got that for Christmas because I struggle with taking medicine consistently because of my ADHD. But anyway, looking for kind of those kind of aspects of life. So what can I take in addition or in of medicine that will help with my quality of life? And it may take some trial and error because not everything will work for you necessarily, but your diet can greatly impact it. So for me, it helped a lot. Now it's important to note when you are taking vitamins, and this is really important to tell your, whoever your doctor is that is providing this medicine, what those medicines are and what the dosage of it is, because, you know, the realm of vitamins and minerals is very unregulated by the FDA.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In terms of, again, going back to what you said earlier about dosage and, you know, what it's based off of. So it's important to tell them what you're taking and what's the dosage, because sometimes it can impact actually your medicine and its ability to treat you. So just keep that in mind as you know, go. But, you know, really look into those things. Let's see, I have, you can look at books like Prescription for Nutritional Healing, like, you know, things like that, or medical herbalism. I have a book on that. You know, different ways that you can treat it. Because, ooh, no. Sorry, all my books just fell.
No problem.
But, you know, that's a kind of side way that, you know, food is related to, you know, chronic illnesses and health. So just don't forget that, because I feel like that's oftentimes brushed aside as taboo and placebo effect, when that is not the case. You know, something that has been practiced for thousands of years, and it's for a reason.
Food is your fuel. It's interesting what you say about having, like, with the medication. Food is also, that's a area of I need to manage in that, and for as a single woman with a chronic illness who understands like eating and blah blah, and I mean the need to fuel myself well, but I don't have the energy to cook like most of the time. I hate cooking. It's so exhausting. And so the question is how to get this nutritious food in me. And the, you know, there is the also other social aspect of how food is used and viewed and abused and in our food system here, right? So the access to nutritious food. But I have had a bumpy relationship with my understanding of food and how I approach it and view it and eat it and not eat it. However, I know and do embrace, especially as my body just is evolving, adapts so quickly, and is, you know, intolerant to gluten one day and one day just to view things as chemical reactions, I think is a better way to put it. Like I just view this as biology, and biology and art were my two favorite subjects, right? So when I think of, all right, what is happening in here? The turmeric is doing some whatever that is cutting the inflammation. Yeah, like, and I visualize it that way. And when I think of, you know, even my mental health, and when I'm so proud of myself of being able to stave off depression over the last year. And part of it was like feeling like, okay, if I keep going down this road, I know where that ends. And understanding that this is not like I'm gonna find myself depressed, but this is my brain. Like I'm creating neurons, I'm creating neural pathways. And if I keep going down that thought process, then I will be depressed. I will become depressed because that neural pathway becomes strengthened and I'm stuck there. Having a, like, you know, mechanical / thing detached aspect to my understanding of how my body works, whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. The point being is it helps me feel and enables me to, like, you know, feel empowered to take care. I'm not someone who, I don't react well to shame. If you tell me like, do this, because I need to figure out my own ways to motivate myself and my own why. Why is it that I want to eat healthy, right? And I think a lot of people, just that reproach of perspective is, you know, the issue is not you eat unhealthy and you're obese and you're a bad person. No, you know, and there are reasons why you eat unhealthy that could be like multiple things. And even if it's because you like unhealthy food and you don't eat healthy, well, there are ways to make healthy food taste better, like just breaking things down with less judgment and shame and less like weight around what it means. But this is what's happening. The turmeric goes into your system, cuts down the inflammation, the pain is decreased, your body's good. It may not be for everyone, but I think it certainly is a different way to think of things that may be helpful for a lot of people.
That's how I am a very logical based person. That's why one of the reasons why I struggle with understanding other people's emotions and kind of my own is because I think about things very logically and like a reaction in a way. So that's why I guess in a way I'm able to be at peace. And with my, medical journey thus far, it is not definitely not for everyone, because for some people that may be too depersonalized and stuff, which is fine. But, it is a way to help process, I guess, or compensate, especially if you are really like science. It could be a fun way to look at things, I think.
It's a different approach, yeah. And you find your own approach, right? There is no, like, the secret is there is no secret. There is no one solution fits all, Absolutely. Right? It is, and you get the chance to, like, I get asked a lot, like, well, how are you, like, how does having your health story help you get better treatment, and what is the value there? The value is what it brings to you, and what enables you to do, and what you do with that information, what you do with your health story, how you use it, not use it, share it, not, that's on you, right? We're just here to give you the tools and to be as valuable, as authentic, as honest, as respectful, as inclusive, as accessible, as all of that good stuff, filled with like color and like, we're not white tech boys, we're colorful people building beautiful stuff. and allow you to form your own journey and to own that journey. And I'm really impressed to hear both of you, just like, it's amazing and makes me feel good and hopeful. Like when I'm at least I know I'll be taken care of in the future. But yeah, hearing you and hearing what you've been able to figure out for yourself and do and share with others is really, really amazing.
Thank
you. One thing about the food, I'm so glad we talked about food, because it's weird because I had a dream last night about how I had like a whole, like literally exactly what Bella is holding up, like the colorful, like I had a whole grid and like I took up a bunch of pillows. It was so random. Anyways, but definitely with food, Bella is very on top of, or like persistent in telling me to nourish my body because I'm really bad at it. And I haven't eaten tonight. So after this, it's 2 p.m. So after this, I definitely need to eat. But definitely, like, I know with the food, like curing things, my mom is very big on, oh my God, my alarm's going off. I'm so sorry. My mom is very big on like lemon ginger tea. And so I have like lemon ginger tea, I have my Alka-Seltzer, and then I have my emergency I've just been like consuming all day. But it's so interesting how like with the pharmaceutical company, I can't even, which is also interesting because I'm a farm tech, but like just watching how people, like how the pharmaceutical company can manipulate people into thinking that they need to take all this medicine to cure their illness, when a lot of times, and again, like, food isn't for everyone, but it's just for a lot of people, not for everyone, is an accessible way, or just like an easier way, because you're not paying all that extra money for the medicines, which can be so stupid expensive.
One of my tailors is like literally $500.
It's crazy. I was like checking people out.
out of
And like
pocket.
looking at the money before insurance, it's like literally $800. And I was like, what? It's just the things I've learned. It's crazy. But anyways, yeah, so I think the food is a very, and I agree with you, Jerry. Like that's definitely like probably the last thing that I'm doing. And I'm really, it also just takes
Yeah.
a lot of time, like
Ugh.
to go through like each thing that you
Collecting
like cut out
everything.
dairy, then cut out grains. It just takes so much time. And like I
Yeah.
have no time to eat in general. Like I'm always eating and working. But eventually, hopefully, I can reach the point in my life where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like dedicate these next few months or this next year to like figure out my diet. Because who knows, maybe my problem could have been solved a year ago if I just took the time. Anyways.
Well, you know how I said I'm a capitalist? My goal and my solution is just to get like, me wealthy and had hire a cook, because I can't be doing this on my own. I can't. I need the food brought to me. And it's a struggle, and it's like if I get frustrated with myself and I feel bad and I feel guilty. But yeah, I've been on a smoothie bend, so yay me. I'm impressed with that.
Oh, I should make a smoothie. I used to eat solid food.
Smoothies is one of those things that feels like it's so much effort, even though it's like not whatsoever.
It really is.
And a lot of it is, like the other, there are days where I can't chop. Like it's just like my wrist is just it's not going to chop. There are days where, and when it's one thing to be like, all right, I can order, but when, looking at my budget, like, okay, I need to eat something. But what is it that I can make? And it's hard. And there are a lot of people who struggle with consuming enough nutritious food because of lack of access and because of lack of ability to, make it. But yeah, food is, I'm rejigging my relationship, hopefully it'll become a love affair soon. We're not there yet, but hopefully.
Yeah, I definitely need to, after this, I need to eat something because this is not good.
Yeah.
So the inspirational quote is Martin Luther King, and it is, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And so I think that this quote is just relevant because it talks about self-advocacy, and we've been talking about that, and just the importance of staying persistent, especially in your health journey, or just in no matter what realm you're doing, just to stay persistent. And yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy. Life in general just isn't easy, but if you stay focused on the things that matter and your passions and your goals, I think eventually you'll reach what you've been striving for all the time. So,
Which is about the purpose of life. If you lose your purpose and you give up on it, it's hard for some people that struggle with mental health. It may just, be the end be all. Or if you struggle with an illness and just giving up, end all be all. But passion, purpose of life.
It certainly is a journey. And we are at a very interesting moment in time where we will see how we will move on. What so many of us will be silent to. Will we just forget 500, 600,000 people and just like they didn't exist? Are we moving on with lessons from this global human experience of this pandemic? What are we learning? And I think for all of us, it's just I think it's a unique moment in time to ask yourself, what am I not going to be silent on based on what I've learned? Like, what do I refuse to be silent on? I know my non-negotiables, right? And knowing that, yep, and there is no way you can get me to compromise on my integrity or this, and our focus on these are my non-negotiables based on my experience, what I care, what I value. Purpose can change, purpose can come and go. It is amazing to have a purpose, but there will be a lot of times in your life where that is a struggle, or you lose it, or blah. Like it's not a given. But the values and the like fundamentals, those are yours, and those are all in your control. And go out there loudly. Shout to be heard.
But definitely needed. So, I mean, this has been incredible recording. If you have any final words of advice, linking to resources, and then you can shout out all of your socials, your website, and then just future projects to come or anything like that.
Sure. You can find us at healthstory.me. Please sign up for our early access. We aim to be reaching out to our insider community soon, and launching probably end summer, early fall. You can find us on Instagram, Health Story Corp, I believe. I'm so bad at knowing my socials, by the way, which is why we have an amazing community manager. And on Twitter, my Health Story Co. If anyone is interested in reaching me directly, you can find me at old school email, njeri @healthstory.me. Yes, I am old. And I mean, in terms of accounts to follow or inspiration, I mean, I'm not thinking of anything right now at the top of my head. I do think that any form of self-advocacy for yourself is for it is an act of advocacy for others, and which is again why I'm just super hardened, and we really love this conversation, both of y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a really good one. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I have food to make and a project that is due in 3 hours. So
yeah. So just to touch real quick for resources, look at if you don't know where to find accounts outside of obviously theirs, look at hashtags, follow some hashtags. You'll find like niches and accounts that you like if you just follow those. And so we'll get right into us. You can find us at our website at www.nourishmysoul.org. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube under Nourish My Soul. You can find us on Instagram at either nourish.my.soul, or you can follow our teen group From the Ground Up, but it's not From the Ground Up, it's at From without the O, Ground Up. You can email our founder, Alicia, who's actually a nutritionist by trade, technically, at Alicia, ALICIA, at nourishmysoul.org. And you can, of course, listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. That's Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. Or, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much again, Njeri. We will definitely stay in contact. This was incredible. And everyone, look out for Health Story. It's coming soon.
Yeah, thank you both. I'll be reaching out to both directly.
For sure.
But thank you. It's been a lovely conversation. Let me know if I can share anything else. And thank you for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
So much.
Thank you so much.